everyone, and welcome to my Graphics-a-thon vlog. So this month is Graphics-a-thon, which means the challenge is to read 28 graphic novels in 28 days, or at least to read a part of a graphic novel every single day in February. For me personally, I'm going to be going for 28 graphic novels in 28 days because I don't like pausing graphic novels even like halfway through or anything like this. I like to read them the whole way through. As soon as I start them, no pausing. So I'm going to be trying to read 28 graphic novels in 28 days. And I'm not going to go through my TBR right now because quite frankly it's 28 graphic novels long, and I am also trying to mood read this a little bit in the sense that I am trying to read just whatever I feel like. There are a few things on the must list, and I do have a sort of tentative list for what I want to read, but I'll leave a link to my TBR for February in its entirety up above so you can check that out, where I do list all of it so I don't have to repeat myself here. But what I'm going to be starting with this month is My Hero Academia Volume 5 because it's come through on my library and I've only got 2 days left before it's like taken back again, so I should probably start with that one because that one is the most urgent. So what I'm going to do is read it and then report back, and that's basically how this vlog's going to go. I'm going to read the comic and then report back on what I think about it, some of my favourite panels, whatever I want to talk about. So let's go on with My Hero Academia. So I've just finished My Hero Academia Volume 5, and I've got to admit this one is a lot more fun than the previous volume. I think it's because even though the artwork was still slightly confusing, it was less confusing and we were focusing more on the characters we knew, and also we had other heroes narrating throughout this tournament because this one is about the different kids of the superhero school. I nearly called it the Umbrella Academy then, that's not right, but completely blame the fact that the costumes have UA on them, so I just think of the Umbrella Academy. But I think it's because we actually had the superhero teachers from the school narrating what was going on. I could understand a lot better what was going on. But what I especially loved about this volume was Deco having the conversation with the half fire half ice character whose name I've forgotten. I really enjoyed that conversation and sort of exploring more with that because obviously this character's got so much conflict with his father and his mother and things like that. I really enjoyed seeing that conversation even in the middle of battle, and also seeing how Deco's powers cannot fail him and the powers of All Might sort of backfiring. I really enjoy those types of things and consequences with powers. I don't think I have a favourite panel for this one, but I think I'm going to give this one a 3.5 to 4 star because I did enjoy this one a lot more than I did the previous one, but it still wasn't absolutely perfect, and I'm sort of comparing it to Spy X Family, which is my favourite manga, so I really enjoyed it, but it was not my favourite. And I will join you again tomorrow for the next one, and I think I'm going to be trying maybe Low or Aphrodite IX because they're currently on sale on Comixology, so I'm thinking if I start them I can then possibly buy the next ones while they're on sale. But I'll see how I feel tomorrow. But I've got one done, great start, and it was a good one, so very happy. So I'll see you for tomorrow for the second with my second graphic novel. So I've now just finished day 2's graphic novel, and that was Low Volume 2. I did quite enjoy this one. I really liked seeing how the sisters were faring, so we got to see the other sister and how she's dealing with everything that's going on, seeing them meet again. That was really great. I really liked seeing the mother's grief over what happened in the previous volume, exploring a few more characters, how the world worked. It really sort of built more on the world building of the world, I guess you could say, and how it's all run. I really enjoyed that. The only thing I have with this is the female character designs. Not all of them, just some of them. Specifically the daughters who are now grown up. They are quite often running around topless for no reason. So you just get a whole load of gratuitous boob shots and no man is remotely uncovered. So it's like, it's really quite sexist in that way. Apart from that, everything else is fine. It's just that is really annoying. So I'm hoping in future volumes that's going to stop because it's really annoying and sexist. But apart from that, I'm really enjoying it, and I've given it 4 stars because I had a really great time. So day 3 has just passed and I have now just read Aphrodite IX, and I will not be continuing this series because, quite frankly, The story is reasonable in the idea that we're following this female robot assassin who forgets every single time she finishes a murder, and she's trying to figure out what's going on, all the rest of it. Very interesting. But the writing itself is confusing, and I can't get past the artwork, because the artwork is so sexist. It makes Loeb from yesterday look perfectly fine. Because Aphrodite is just constantly wearing a ripped tank top and the shortest skirt ever, which means that you just get gratuitous shots all the time of her underwear. Just the whole way through. For no reason whatsoever. And that's if she's even wearing a skirt, because half the time she's running around in what can only be described as underwear and bondage gear and like a cloak. I'm not here for that. I'm really not here for that, quite frankly. And she's supposed to be like this big badass kind of thing, but she doesn't really act like it for most of the time. And then she keeps on calling her creator Daddy. She's a full-grown woman. And during her first few years of life, she was being taught by this guy who clearly obviously had some level of power over her, because he created her and he's teaching her like basic things like a child, and she's calling him Daddy while running around in basically nothing or very revealing clothes. And not to kink shame anybody, but that just... not for me. Not for me. So this was only a 2-star read. I will not be continuing the series. So tomorrow, complete reset, I'm gonna try Dawn of X, or a Marvel comic anyway, that just resets everything that I know I'm going to enjoy, that's not going to be sexist, or at least hopefully not as sexist. It probably won't be. All the comics I'm currently in the middle of in terms of Marvel are not with scantily clad women for no reason. So I'm gonna try one of those tomorrow instead to reset all of this. So yeah, day 3, not the best, but is another comic down. So as part of my reset, I decided to read Bitch Planet Volume 1, because I figured, I mean, that's got to be pretty feminist, and it is in its way. I did actually quite enjoy this one. This one is following this slightly futuristic idea where women, if they do any sort of infraction in a very, very, very patriarchal society, gets chucked onto a prison planet called Bitch Planet, and they are now sort of trying to fight back and are making a sports team, and they're going to try and use that to get off this planet, essentially. And I really quite enjoyed this one. It was a bit weird, and it took me a little bit of time to sort of get used to what was being said and what was going on, but I actually really enjoyed this. I will say again that there is a lot of nakedness in this one, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting a lot less nakedness, but I can see where it was coming from this time. And things like this, and it didn't feel gratuitous in any way, because you could tell that this was written by a woman, which is really nice. But the thing that rubbed me up the wrong way was the thing that was supposed to rub me up the wrong way while reading this one, and that is the patriarchal society. In this you get like little hints at what life is like for women on Earth in this, and it's not good. You see things like advertisements, because they have like little extracts from like newspapers and little adverts in these newspapers for like parasitic tapeworms for tweens, so like ages 10 to 12, so they're thin enough. You've also got adverts saying, if you like the sport that these girls are trying to make a sports team out of, it's very much like, if you pretend to like this, he'll like you more. And like, oh yeah, it's sort of like pitting women against each other, and doing the whole like, take these pills, you'll never disagree with him again kind of thing. And it's very that level of patriarchal, which did rub me up the wrong way, but I know it was supposed to. So I think my overall verdict is a 4-star read. I really enjoyed this one, and it felt like a really good reset. Now, because it's Friday, it's actually my mum's birthday, but she's out at the moment, I have a very, very busy weekend ahead, and it's also my best friend's birthday on Sunday. So what I'm going to do is read the next 3 comics I need to read as well today, so I'm still on track. So I'm thinking I'm going to go for The Wicked and the Divine next, and then The Banks, and then if I've got time I may start a Dawn of X. I'll see how time goes. I don't think I'm going to have that much time, but we'll see how it goes. So on to the next ones, and hopefully we'll continue on with this vein of really enjoying it with the less patriarchal society and sexist drawings, so let's get going. Just finished my second comic for the day, and that was The Banks by Roxane Gay. I really enjoyed this. It was not a sci-fi fantasy or anything like this. It was literally just a heist story run by the women of the Banks family, and I really enjoyed this one because I loved like the backstory we've got and like the flashback to the older generations of the Banks when they were younger, how they got into the heist business and all of this kind of stuff. It really reminded me in its way as well of Ocean's 8, which I absolutely loved as well. The Ocean's movies are some of my favourite movies of all time, so I really enjoyed it on that level, and this was just a really good comic. I would say I think that the ending wrapped up a little bit too nicely for me personally, but I still really like this one. I love the themes it went into. I loved the revenge plotline. I love seeing the twists and turns of this one and how they pulled the heist off. This has a very sort of cinematic feel to it as well, so I really would like to see this adapted into a film or a TV show. I think it's got such good potential in that sense as well. It was really good, and this is probably my favourite Roxane Gay comic I've read. I've read a couple and they haven't been my favourites, but this one has convinced me to give Roxane Gay's other stuff another go because I really like this and I gave it 4 stars. Third comic of the day is The Wicked and the Divine, and I cannot believe I've never read this before because that was really good fun in the sense that you've got this entire pantheon of gods who get reincarnated every 90 years. They live for 2 years as like pop icons and then they die, and I really like this one. I think I found it slightly confusing as to like what was going on and whether some people thought the gods were real or if it was a fake, but I really like the mythology of this. I really like the fact that Lucifer was a main character, but I think that's just because I miss Netflix Lucifer. I really like the fact that Lucifer was also female because we don't get that often. I love that. I just really liked the dynamics of this one and the world it's setting up, and I am definitely going to be getting the sequel probably when it goes on sale. It's not currently on sale at the moment, so either for my birthday or when it goes on sale, whichever happens first. But that was a really good comic, and I reckon that's also going to be a 4-star because the artwork was brilliant, the characters were brilliant, the storyline was really good, just slightly confusing, and I just generally really enjoyed myself. Graphic novel number 4 of the day has been finished, and that was Once and Future by Kieran Gillen, and this one is sort of like about monster hunters and also the King Arthur idea, and basically like King Arthur gets reborn and it's not actually a good thing. King Arthur's actually not the nice guy we were hoping for, or all the legends say he is, and you've now got this family who are now trying to hunt down King Arthur and try to stop basically the world from ending because of King Arthur. And again, this one was a 4-star read. I really liked this one because you've just got this badass granny who's just shooting everyone. Which just makes me laugh every time just thinking about it, you know? And you've got like the clueless guy who has no idea who's been dragged into all of this and all the rest of it. I found it all really interesting. I would say that I found some bits slightly confusing in the sense that when they're talking about like the Fisher King and the Percivals, the Galahads, the Lancelots and how it all works, that I found slightly confusing. But apart from that, I really like this, and I've immediately added the next one to my wish list, again to be bought probably for my birthday or if it goes on sale anytime soon, because I really like this one. I really like the art style as well and the characters and everything else. So that was great. I'm now up to 7 graphic novels read, so I'm now going to take a couple of days off because I've got a couple of very busy days, and so I will see you probably on the 8th actually now for my next graphic novel, and I don't know what I'm going to go for yet. I'll see how I feel. It's probably going to be a short one this time, but very excited to carry on anyway. I am loving doing this. This is so much fun. I love like going through all these graphic novels, so I'm really excited to see where this is going to go from here. Right, so busy weekend's now over. Now I have read The Truth, Red, White and Black, and this is the story of Isaiah Bradley, who you may have seen in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who is the other Captain America, specifically the Black Captain America, who was experimented on against his will, and when he broke free and decided to go on a mission by himself that was supposed to be a suicide mission, what the US government did to him for insubordination, despite the fact that they wouldn't have done the same thing to Steve whatsoever. And to say the least, this book is harrowing to read in places, especially considering that it's kind of based on true life events, in the sense that you've got the basis for this was actually on like black people who were experimented on without their knowing, against their will, and everything throughout like the 1940s and onwards. And you've got a lot of things in here about racism. Obviously it's set in World War II, so there's a lot of anti-Semitism as well, and talk of Zionism. There's obviously a lot of racism as well, like I said, like anti-black racism. There's 1940s terminology for black people. There's obviously human experimentation, there's murder-suicide at one point, there is also obviously a lot of violence, there's court-martialing, there's experimentation, like I said, there's a scene that takes place in a gas chamber as well. There's also like the talk of like solitary confinement as well, in terms of Isaiah and what happened to him, and so many other things. And it is, quite frankly, absolutely harrowing to read. I would say it's a very, very important read, even if you're not a Marvel fan, because like I said, it is based on real world events in some ways. It's just sort of been twisted to the super soldier serum instead of other things. I have a whole blog post about Isaiah and all of that kind of stuff, so I'll leave a link to that down below so you can check it out. But this was a harrowing read, to say the least. Definitely check out the full trigger warnings for this, because there are a lot. But it was worth reading, definitely 100%. It was a 4-star read. I did enjoy it. The art style was not my favourite, but apart from that, this was a very, very good read and a very important read. But it was also a very, very dark read to read. So I'd say it's important. I would recommend it, especially if you have watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and if you haven't, go watch it. But even if you just want to know more about Isaiah and like stories based on real world events, things like this, definitely check it out. I would recommend it. It's just a very dark and harrowing read in places. We are up to day 9, and today I've decided that I'm restarting the Rat Queen series, because I have read these books like ages apart from each other. I got to volume 3 and was just very confused because I wasn't following it properly, because like I said, I was taking too long to read each one. So what I've decided is I'm going to read the next 6 over the next 6 days and just sort of like marathon it, because that's how many I've got, and then I'll see what I feel like in terms of volume 7. So in terms of volume 1, obviously this is a reread, and I forgot how much I love this series, quite frankly, because it is a ridiculous story, because it's about female mercenaries basically figuring out who wants them dead while also drinking, getting high, having sex, and just being very sort of stereotypically laddish, and I just really love it. There's lots of blood, there's lots of creative swearing. I really like the storyline. I like this idea of them figuring out who's trying to kill them all the time, as well as like these little like snapshots into their lives, like the fact that one of them's come from what is essentially a cult. You've got another one who's got problems with her parents. You've got also one of them's having relationship troubles with another woman, and then you've also got one who is a dwarf who's shaved off their beard, and their twin brothers also just turned up. So it's like you've got all of these different moving parts with lots of other different mercenaries involved and mercenary teams, and you just get a really nice sort of little look into this fantasy world to start with. I think it's a really, really good start to the series. The art style is really nice as well. I really like that it gives you this really quick snapshot so you know exactly who you're dealing with, their relationships with each other, their relationships with other people. It really sets up like later bits for the later books as well, and various different storylines to go from here, and I just really, really like it. It's sort of, I'd recommend it for people who also like Deadpool. That's how I describe it. It's sort of like fantasy female Deadpool, and that's the only way I can describe it, and I think it works quite well. And I just generally really enjoy the series, and it's either going to be a 4 or a 5-star. I haven't put it through Core Pile yet, but I reckon it's going to be somewhere between a 4.5 and a 5 star, because I just really love this series, and I'm so excited to be restarting it again because it's just great. It is just great. It's now day 10, so I've read volume 2 of Rat Queens, and I really enjoyed this one as well. What I really want to highlight with this one is how well the characters' backstories were weaved into this volume, because they're fighting this great big massive creature that whenever they look into the eyes of, they see their pasts, which means we as the audience see their pasts as well, and I thought that was a really genius way of doing it. So we're still following the story and we're not being taken completely out of this big battle or anything like this, but we're still getting to learn more about these characters as well and their pasts and a bit more about them, things like this. I also really love the character dynamics in this as well. I love seeing how all of the girls sort of relate to each other, but then also fight with each other, but they love each other really, that kind of thing. How they relate to other men as well, and like dwarven politics and tradition, things like this. That was really interesting, and how people treat like demon children and things like this. I found it all really interesting, and it really sort of built more on the world of Rat Queens and everything else, and it was just generally a good time. So it's either going to be a 4 or a 5 star. I'm leaning more towards 5 star at the moment, to be honest, but we'll see what happens. So it's now the 11th and it is a Friday, which means I need to read 3 comics today to keep up to date with everything, because I have a very busy weekend and I just generally don't manage to read on weekends. So I have done that. I have read the next 3 in the Rat Queen series, which is volumes 3, 4 and 5, and I am going to talk about all of these things all in one great big go, because that's going to be the easiest way to do it. If you want my thoughts on each individual one, I will leave a link down below to my Instagram and TikTok where I have the individual videos, but as a whole I am really loving this series. I love the sense of humour for it. I love the fight scenes, because I sometimes find with graphic novels and mangas, things like this, I find the art style makes fight scenes very confusing and hard to follow, but this was really easy to follow, so I could always tell who was fighting who and what was happening and things like this, so I like really appreciate that. I also really like where the storyline is going, because I was really enjoying the 3rd volume, which is where I got up to last time, and then there seemed to be a time jump in volume 4 and I was like, wait a minute, we've skipped a whole load of stuff here. But it turns out in volume 5 it is a what if scenario, which is my favourite thing to read ever. I love what if scenarios, and this was 100% a what if. And I love that. I am always here for that kind of thing, so I'm really excited to see where volume 6 goes, and exploring more with like Hannah's powers, everybody's powers, how everything's going on. I'm loving also the exploration of friendship here, because the Rat Queen's friendship is being tested quite a lot, so I'm really liking seeing how they all interact with each other and how like they all care for each other in their own little ways, things like this. I'm loving like the fact that we're not getting girl hate in this or anything. They all do genuinely like each other. Like, yeah, they are going to banter and call each other names and swear at each other quite a lot and occasionally hit each other, but it's not done out of girl hate unnecessarily and things like that, so I really appreciate that. I also appreciate that men are also sexualised as much as women are in this, so there's a bit of equality there compared to, say, Aphrodite IX, which was just entirely unbelievably sexist. So very happy about that as well. And I just really like the creative swearing. Like, I love a creative swear word, but in this, it is literally like every 5 minutes there is a creative swear word, and I am living for it. Essentially, if you're a Deadpool fan, read Rat Queens. That's the only way I can describe it. If you like Deadpool, the films or the comics, Rat Queens is for you. I love this series. But now I'm slightly worried, because I only own one more. I only own volume 6, and then I don't have volume 7. And it's been on my wish list for a very long time, but I'm sort of on a book buying ban for the rest of the month, because I have spent too much money recently on books and stuff, and obviously I spent a lot in like January, and it's not an official book buying ban or anything like this, but I am sort of trying to not buy that many comics, which means I'm probably going to have to wait until like my birthday week, where this is just going to fall to pieces in terms of like me going, I've just turned 26, I don't care anymore, I'm going to buy all the things. So I'm going to have to wait till then, but I don't really want to wait till then, but I'm going to have to. But I do love this series. It is amazing. I really regret like not like reading it in full beforehand and things like this. I'm definitely going to have to read this more like consecutively and try to sort of keep up with it a bit better, because I do love this series. It is absolutely chaotic, it is violent, it is gory, the swear words, like I said, are creative as hell, and I absolutely love it. So I've now just finished the Gwenpool series by reading Gwenpool Volume 5, and I'm really sad this series is now over because I absolutely adore this series. This series is obviously all about Gwenpool, who is, well, she's from our world and she's been sucked into the world of Marvel Comics, and she now fangirls her way around while trying to be a superhero, things like this. It's really, really good fun, really, really light-hearted, and what I really liked about this one was that we got a bit of Gwen having an existential crisis in a way as well in this one, while it remaining still very, very light-hearted, and we got to see how much Gwen cares for people and things like this. I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked exploring more of Gwen's powers as well. And just generally, I really liked it, and now I'm really, really sad that it's over because I love this series so much. I love Gwenpool so much. I luckily have Gwenpool Strikes Back, but that is the only other Gwenpool comic I own, so I'm hoping I'm going to find her in other things. I know she turns up in Champions and West Coast Avengers, so I've got a few other things to look forward to, but I'm sad that I don't have much more of her solo run left. But I did really, really like this one, and I think it's given me an idea for what I want to do for this month's bullet journal theme as well. So yeah, I enjoyed it a hell of a lot, and I gave it 4 stars, but I'm now really sad it's over. So I've now just finished volume 7 of Fables, and that was Arabian Night. And I've got to say this one is a lot more like diverse in this one, because we're getting more of like Sinbad and mentions of Aladdin, Mowgli, things like this. But I've got to say as well that this was very, very stereotypical in its view of like Muslim characters and Muslim coded characters, and sort of like the culture from places like Afghanistan, places like that, things like this. So it was slightly stereotypical, but for context, this was also written in 2006, so I mean, in that time we weren't as conscious of these things, so it could just be 2006 and the context of it being in that time, I don't know, but it was still reasonably interesting. I can't get past the stereotypes, to be honest, because that's still not okay, even though it was 2006, so in that sense I'm a little bit like eek on that one. But I do like that we are now getting more diverse fairy tales involved in the Fable series, and I did also like the story at the end as well with the wooden soldiers. So we're sort of getting more of like the adversary, things and everything that's going down with the adversary, things like this. But I would say that I didn't really enjoy the stereotypes involved in this, so in the end I gave it 3 stars. It was interesting, but it was still very stereotypical in places, and I do think that could be harmful. In the last couple of days I have managed to read Dawn of X volumes 11 and 12, and then I have also read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe and Bloodshot. So I'm going to start with Bloodshot and then I'll go through Dawn of X in a minute. So Bloodshot is a story about an assassin who has been experimented on. He's basically cybernetic at this point, and every single time he kills someone his mind gets wiped, and they keep on putting like a different backstory in there to motivate him to do these killings and things like this. And I've got to say, this was a really interesting start to this world. It laid a lot of groundwork, things like that. I did quite enjoy it. I only gave it 3 stars, but I think I will continue. I'm not sure. I will have to have a think on that one, but it was definitely a good thing to try and read, especially after I had seen the movie a couple of weeks ago. I really enjoyed the movie, I will say, with Vin Diesel, so I'll see what I feel like in terms of maybe picking up another comic in this. And then I have read 2 more Dawn of X's, and I'm hoping to actually finish the series this week because I've only got 4 left. And then I go on to 10 of Swords, which is exciting. But what I loved about these 2 was that we're expanding more of Krakoa. We're getting solo Cable story, solo Wolverine story. Wolverine's ones involving vampires, particularly Dracula, which I love because I love vampires. Cable story is really, really interesting as well because it's like him being solo, but he's also dating all of the Stepford Cuckoos, which is a bit weird. And Emma's a bit like, do not break my girl's hearts. Apart from Esme, she deserves it, so Emma's weird. All of them are weird, but that's quite interesting to see that sort of dynamic there as well, and sort of seeing how he's like being like this young kid while also flashing back to previous times, things like this. That's all very interesting. I do love Cable and I love learning more about Cable, so that I'm finding very, very interesting. Also seeing all of these characters, like the more undesirable mutants and how they're dealing with those by putting them into a new team called the Hellions, and they're going, you could do the more dangerous missions where you can sort of let all the anger loose and sort of that side of things, and seeing Madeline Pryor, who is the clone of Jean Grey and also the ex-girlfriend of two of the Summers boys, which is very confusing, and all the rest of it. The Summers have a family and Jean have a very, very complicated history, to say the least, so that was very interesting to see, especially considering seeing like Havoc's darker side and things like that. That I found very interesting. Seeing the introduction and the reform as well of X Factor I really enjoyed, because I love Polaris and Polaris was one of the main characters in this one. Really like that, along with Rachel Summers, who is another one of the Summers Jean lot. Again, there's hundreds of them, which is very funny in a way and confusing in another way. So I found that very, very interesting, especially with the interaction of Polaris and her father Magneto. Found that very interesting, seeing Emma and all of Emma's machinations and everything she's doing, as well as this sort of plot line that's just been brought back up again with the fact that Kate Pryde, aka Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat, cannot be resurrected. She can't step on Krakoa anyway, despite the fact that she is a mutant. She should be allowed on. She now can't be resurrected either, so I'm having some theories as to what's going on there, and it's very, very interesting. So overall, it's all very, very interesting. I love Dawn of X. I'm so glad I'm reading more of it, and I gave both of them 4 stars. So I'm currently on day 22. It turns out that reading a comic on the Kindle is a lot better after the Comixology updates, because it actually zooms in properly instead of on my laptop. It's weird, but there we go. Completely different story to talk about at another time. But I'm only like 10% of the way through, 16% of the way through this Dawn of X Volume 13, and we're getting more about old Cable and young Cable and all the rest of it. And what I love is the correspondence that gets put in between Cable and Deadpool, because obviously the two of them go way back and way forward and every way forward, and they're like besties but kind of not, in a weird way. And basically Cable says in a normal letter, you can't see that, it's in a normal letter to Deadpool saying, if I die, do not let Strife, who is basically his evil clone, get his body or any part of his body. And it says, if friendlies bury the body, intervene when you can move safely. I'll find you later. Right, so Cable just sent him that, and then Deadpool sends him a letter that looks like it should be out of Bridgerton, because it's all with like all the quill and it's all very nicely written and all the rest of it, and it's very funny. Because this letter says, my dearest Nathan, I have received your distressing missive, and now I will take my quill in hand to let you know that I am well, and hope my correspondence finds you similarly also well. I can think of no greater responsibility than to collect your earthly remains after the other side of a heinous attack. I shall keep a snow shovel and some garbage bags with me at all times in anticipation of the dreadful news reaching me that something has happened to you, your old ass. As you know, I have been something of an amateur funeral director for many years, and knowing that my work has caught your eye means the world to me. I would of course keep a full accounting of expenses incurred should it become necessary for me to clean up. Serious sincerities, Deadpool. That is just so perfect Deadpool. Like, that is pure Deadpool, and I love it. So it's now actually March the 1st, the Graphics-a-thon readathon is over, and I've just realised I did not update you for like the last week of what I've read. So I'm just going to wrap it up in series form, because I finished off a couple of series and then read like the continuations of a couple of others, so I'm going to do it that way, because that's going to be the easiest way to do this. First thing that I finished was Dawn of X. That's right, I have finally finished Dawn of X all the way up to volume 16, and I loved all of these volumes. I absolutely adore them. I love seeing Wolverine dealing with vampires because I'm always here for a vampire story, so that was epic to see Wolverine fighting vampires. I love the Cable storyline as well, and like how he's got this magical sword now and he's having to fight like these sort of robot things and things like this. I also love the exploration of the fact that he's dating all of the Cuckoos. If you don't know, they are like 3 or 5, I always forget how many there are. There's usually 3, but there seems like there's now 5, it's weird. But they are essentially a group of identical sisters, and they're all psychic, and they're all identical, and they all move exactly like together, essentially. They're like sort of like carbon copies of each other that all move at the exact same time. It's one of those, and I absolutely love that storyline as well. I found that very, very interesting, especially with how Emma Frost, who's sort of like their mother figure, is sort of looking at that. I really enjoyed as well the zombie storyline, where a whole load of them are on Genosha, which was the original X-Men island, where it all went down in House of M, shall we put it. I really, really enjoyed that bit as well, and seeing like Wanda resurrecting all of these zombies, things like that. I found that very, very interesting. I loved Illy's storyline as well. I'm always here for Ileana. I loved Kate Pryde's bit as well. That was fantastic. So I had a really good time reading all of these. I gave it 4 stars on average, and I am so, so excited to read X of Swords now in March. So that was really good. I then also went on to read all new X-Men volumes 2 and 3, which is Apocalypse Wars and Hell Hath No Fury. Really, really like these as well. I really like seeing how the aftermath of everything that happened in the House of M stuff, and like the Brian Michael Bendis run, where the younger X-Men are brought forward in time to the now, and are now sort of dealing with everything Scott's done, what Beast has done, the fact that Jean is dead and there's now a young Jean, things like that. I found all that really, really interesting. I really also enjoyed seeing how Scott is dealing with it, because in this time, older Scott's now dead, so now there's just younger Scott, and he's having to deal with what his older self has done. It's all wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, and I love it. I really, really enjoyed this one. I also really liked as well the exploration of like X-23 and how she's dealing with being on vacation, which she really doesn't like, things like this, and her relationship with Angel. Bobby trying to flirt for the first time with boys because he's come out as gay. I found that very, very fun as well, especially with the girls, and Nightcrawler also really supporting him on this. I really liked as well Evan, who is the young clone Apocalypse. You can just assume with the X-Men there's a lot of clones and a lot of wibbly wobbly timey wimey, which I love. I really, really enjoyed his storyline as well, and what I really want to highlight as well is Scott's fight that he had, because he's fighting this demon monster thing and he's viewing it like a video game. Like, literally, he's viewing it like a video game. So what he's doing is, like, seeing it with, like, health points and things like this. I thought it was a really interesting, really fun way of doing a battle scene and things like that. I found that very, very fun and very, very interesting. And it was a really good time to read it like that. And, yeah, so I gave that one also 4 stars, or both of those ones 4 stars. Really, really liked them. I then also read Low Volume 3. This one I found slightly more confusing than the previous volumes, I will admit. I was sitting there with a bit of a what look on my face for most of it, because I was just a bit confused, I've got to admit, because I was just like, it felt like there was a time jump. I don't think there was. I think my problem was the fact that I've mainlined so many comics in February that I got confused as to what was going on, and I had too many storylines running through my head at the same time. So that is something to be warned of next time I try something like this, so I'll keep that in mind. But in the end, I did also really like the juxtaposition between the two sisters. I really liked that. I really liked seeing how, as well, the characters like interacted, and how they're dealing with the fact that both of them have had such different but traumatic lives, and how they're trying to sort of work together but they're not really working together, things like this. I found that very, very fun. I also really, really liked as well the mother's storyline and exploring what's going on the surface of the earth as well. Found that very, very interesting, but because I was confused, I gave it 3 stars. It was still fun. I will be continuing on with this series. It's just the fact that this one was a little bit confusing. And then finally I read an extra bonus comic because I had a spare hour. Like yesterday on the 28th, I had a spare hour and I was like, well, I could read some fan fiction, but I'm gonna read another comic, because of course I did, and that was Fables Volume 8, Wolves. And the reason why I read this one is because it's the last book I own in this series before I need to start buying some more. And I was like, well, I've got this spare hour, I may as well read it. So then I've completed another one of my reading goals for the year that I've put in my reading journal. So to have that done by February is amazing. And I was like, right, I definitely want to do this. So that is what I've done. I read Wolves. This one went back to a storyline I really like, which is Bigby Wolf and Snow White and their children, and how they've had to be separated because Bigby isn't allowed in the farm, which is the upstate New York farm where all of the talking animals are, and considering his and Snow White's kids are werewolves in a way, they had to go to the farm. I found that very, very interesting. I also really liked exploring like what they'll do to get Bigby back into the farm, so what he's doing in terms of like the war against the adversary, things like this. I would say look up trigger warnings because obviously there's a lot here. I should also mention with Dawn of X as well, there is a lot of talk of Russian interference and war, things like this, so please be warned going into it, because at the moment that's a bit like, it's a bit too topical at the moment, I will say. So if you are going to go into Dawn of X or also Fables, please be warned there is a lot of talk of war, and especially with Dawn of X, it's talking about war with Russian interference, so please be warned about that. I'll also leave a link actually down below as well, and I have done for the last few videos with a whole load of links to stuff about Ukraine, places to donate, things like this, so please do check that out and donate if you can. But back to Fables, I really liked as well seeing how the Fables are trying to fight back, and also how they're trying to deal with the people who are in the clouds, because obviously Jack and the Beanstalk exists, so you've got giants in the clouds, and so I found that very, very interesting, in seeing how Cinderella is trying to create a sort of peace treaty between Fabletown and the Cloud Lot. Found that very interesting. Really also liked Mowgli's storyline where he's trying to hunt down Bigby, things like this. I found all that really, really fun, really, really interesting, and I gave it 4 stars as well.